Cubs 1900s, the pants drop conspiracy. Chicago, early 1900s. A hot afternoon, the bleachers packed, brass bands wheezing, the smell of popcorn and cigars rolling through the stands. And then, in front of thousands of eager eyes waiting for a textbook slide into base, a pair of pants decided to declare independence from the man wearing them. The crowd erupted in laughter. The opposing team tagged the base as easily as picking up mail. The Cubs lost a run, and history gained another chapter both ridiculous and cruel. For decades it was dismissed as a funny accident. But the files we've uncovered say otherwise. This was sabotage. At 5:13 p.m., a yellowed scrap in the Cubs archive recorded something odd. Stranger in maintenance uniform entered locker room for 40. He wasn't on payroll, carried no badge, and went straight to the corner where the uniforms hung. A Polish cleaning woman later testified in broken English. He had little scissors. He bent down at the waistband, very quick. When the old storage trunk from that season was opened, the waistband from the uniform showed threads softened in 2 spots, tight enough to hold while standing, brittle enough to snap the moment it met sideways pressure. Not a rip, a deliberate booby trap. And out on the diamond, the ground told its own story. Soil samples preserved in jars labeled diamond soil. Case P contained beeswax and animal fat. No field crew in 1900 Chicago used that mix for upkeep. Its only purpose? To reduce friction. So when the Cubs runner came barreling in, knees cutting through dirt, his thigh hit the treated patch, the resistance vanished. The slide turned into a glide. And the first thing to betray him was the waistband that had been doctored hours before. One sharp snap, like the tongue click of fate. Picture it. Cap tilted down, glove reaching for the bag, dust cloud exploding, and then, riot, cloth collapsing like a stage curtain. The stadium froze for half a second, then detonated in laughter. By the next morning, at least 4 newspapers printed the pants drop photo from 4 perfect angles. Remember, this was the era of bulky cameras. Each shot a small war with timing and light. And yet somehow, every photographer in town nailed the exact second of humiliation. One editor even scribbled in the margin of a proof. Good tip. Front page. That wasn't luck. That was scheduling. Reporters didn't just show up, they were invited. A prank only becomes legend when someone makes sure the audience is watching. And who profited from the laughter? A confiscated betting ledger from a Clark Street barbershop had a line scribbled across the date. Cubs lose early run, payout double. No names, just symbols. But outside the ballpark, a photograph shows 3 men in fedoras and long coats leaving with heavy paper bags. One stuffs an envelope into his jacket. The envelope bears the seal of a local newspaper. A devil's alliance. Gamblers cashed in, papers sold out. The prank was immortalized. If the slide had been just embarrassing, it would have been forgotten. But when humiliation pays, humiliation lives forever. The official incident report reconstructs the moment like this. The crowd rose, the peanut vendor's cry drowned out, the outfield throw fired toward the infield, the catcher stretching for the tag, the ump squinting hard. The runner hurtled forward, body angled 30 degrees, knees aimed at the chalk line. He hit the waxed patch, lost every ounce of drag, and all the force traveled straight into the waistband. The waistband some ghost tailor had already cursed that morning. The thread gave way with a pop like a strike whistle. Pants down, striped socks up. The crowd sucked in a breath and then exploded. The opponent laid the tag. The ump barked out because Major League Baseball had, and still has, no clause for pause due to loss of dignity. The band in the bleachers struck up a mocking ragtime tune. A man in row 3 bellowed, "Nice slide." "Kid, wrong item." And a newspaper boy screamed, "Extra, extra," because he knew he was about to sell the edition of his life. Afterward, the locker room was silent as a morgue. Jerseys hung limp like flags at half-mast. The player, victim, sat hunched, a replacement pair of pants draped over the bench. The ruined pair stuffed in a trash bin, waistband frayed like a confession. The manager growled, "Who was in here this morning?" No one spoke. The groundskeeper swore the base area had been locked up the night before. But the lock showed a faint prime mark, subtle enough to fool an amateur, perfect enough to please a professional. The next day the Cubs issued a press release. Wardrobe malfunction. 2 light words, but the headlines weighed heavy. The whole country chuckled, shook its head, and muttered, "Cubs again." And the whispers of a curse began to slither into the team's mythology, long before a goat ever set foot near Wrigley. As for the mystery maintenance man, gone. No payroll, no paper trail. The cleaning woman swore he walked like someone who knew the place better than me. The gatekeeper remembered a man with a toolbox, too clean to be a real toolbox. And a tailor across town swore that same night a stranger paid cash for a special waistband design. The kind that holds when standing, but surrenders when sliding. You see the pattern. The player retired early. A few years later, he opened a tiny clothing shop by the river. Above the door hung a sign with just 7 words, "Double stitch," or "Don't slide." Life had played him dirty. He answered with needle and thread. Customers came, chuckling at the story, buying his trousers anyway, and he'd smile faintly and mutter, "I sell what I didn't have that day." Meanwhile, 2 journalists framed the infamous photo over their desks and lived off its royalties for a decade. As for the Fedora crew, one was later arrested on unrelated charges. In his pocket, police found a crumpled note. Slide equals pay. Nobody bothered to ask who Slide was. Chicago already knew. There is no subsection 47B in the MLB rulebook that says a game must stop when a man's pants betray him. The ump did his job by the book, and that's what made the moment even harsher. Sports is supposed to be the meeting ground of strength, skill, and strategy. That day, it was also the stage for an invisible hand. Victory and defeat didn't just live in bats and gloves. They lived in beeswax, a pair of scissors, and a phone call to the newsroom. So when someone tells you the Cubs lost because they were unlucky, invite them to look again at the tampered waistband, the slick base, the 4 perfectly timed photographs, and the thick envelope stuffed into a fedora's jacket. Luck that neat has a director. Over a century later, people still laugh when they tell the story of the dropped pants. But if you listen closely to the laughter, you can still hear the rustle of envelopes, the snap of thread, and a newsroom whispering down a wire. Cameras ready. The slide is coming. That one play turned a ball game into theater, a player into a punchline, and a team into the mascot of eternal missteps. It left behind a cruel lesson. You can lose by bad strategy, but only when you lose by your pants do you get remembered forever. And sorry, Chicago. On that day, history was written in beeswax, grease, and stitches cut just a little too carefully to be coincidence.